Hello, this is Dias and a new author's story from my channel Russian Revenge Story. Valery walked around the restaurant again. Today he had dismissed all the staff, and all that was left was a little food. He decided that he would come back in a few days and collect everything to give to some shelter. His restaurant had existed for only 5 years. At first, things were going well. The restaurant attracted people. But a year ago, a fast food place opened nearby, and visitors began to move there. Fast, cheap food became more popular than the gourmet dishes that he offered. Valery understood that interest in fast food would quickly pass, because not everyone can constantly eat only such food. But it turned out that everything is not so simple. Guests began to disappear not because of fast food, but because the chef was thinking about moving to another establishment and stopped monitoring the quality of the dishes. Valery bitterly reproached himself for the fact that he had long ago stopped trying dishes himself before including them on the menu. When he finally figured out the problem and tried the food, the restaurant was almost empty. Valery immediately fired the cook, but the situation did not improve. He tried to cook himself, and although he cooked well, he still did not reach the level of the restaurant. In the end, he had to make a difficult decision: close or sell the establishment. He chose to sell, since he was already burdened with a loan taken at the initial stage, and without selling he would not have the funds to pay it off. Everything in the restaurant looked dull and neglected. It was necessary to find someone to clean up the premises, otherwise no buyer would give a good price. In the courtyard, he remembered how not long ago the waitresses cheerfully gathered there for a smoke break, chatting and laughing, and he heard it, sitting in his office, the windows of which looked out onto the courtyard. Out of the corner of his eye, he noticed movement behind a bush, and headed there. "Hello. Excuse me," said from the bushes. A woman looked at him with a wary look. A girl of about 5 years old stood next to her. "Why are you hiding here?" The woman sighed. "Forgive us, we didn't know that the restaurant was no longer open. The girls always brought us something. We'll leave." She was about to leave, but Valery stopped her. "Wait, you don't have a place to live?" She smiled weakly and answered, "Yes, but it's temporary. I'll think of something." He wanted to ask what happened, because the woman with the child clearly didn't look like a homeless person. He noticed the pain in her eyes and decided not to ask unnecessary questions. "Which of the girls helped you?" he asked. "Do you want to punish them?" "No, of course not. I just wanted to know. Was it Tamara, Olya, and Sveta?" She nodded, confirming his guess. "Do you know how to clean up?" The woman was surprised by the question, but still answered, "I think anyone can do it." "Let's go," Valery suggested, pointing to the restaurant. "See for yourself. Everything here is dull and neglected. I could offer you to live here and gradually put everything in order. There will be enough food for a long time." "Can we stay here and cook?" "Yes, for as long as it takes. I will leave you the key to the back entrance so that you can freely leave. There is a sofa in the office, as well as a pillow and a blanket." The woman smiled. "I promise, everything will sparkle here." Valery showed her the kitchen, the food, and everything that was needed for cleaning, and then, hesitating, asked the last question. "Forgive me for being blunt, but you don't look like a homeless person." The woman, whose name turned out to be Lyra, lowered her eyes and nodded in response. "My husband brought another woman, and the only thing missing for them to be completely happy was a child, our daughter. He never cared about her. He cared more about his status. All he cared about was that the family looked beautiful. Now I don't have the opportunity to fight for Ritochka, so I had to run away and wander. Valera shook his head. This was not the first time he had heard such stories. A question arose in his mind. Where were you all when you were choosing your husbands? Lyra seemed to read his thoughts. I know what you think, but he wasn't always like this. Or maybe I didn't notice it. We met when I was only 20. I had housing that the state provided to an orphan, and we sold it to buy a big house. Of course, my husband invested his money too, but now he has a place to live and I have nothing. Valera took hold of the door handle and said, Okay, I won't bother you any more. There are business cards with my number in the drawer of my office. If anything happens, call me. Lyra gently touched his hand. Tell me, why did you decide to close the restaurant? It was so popular, a good place. Valera smiled sadly. It just happened. Do you think only women are betrayed? Friends and partners too. I need a couple more weeks to find a buyer. He left, trying not to disturb Lyra and little Ritochka's rest. As he left, Valera felt as if they had become more like strangers to him. He began to care what would happen to them. 3 days later, he looked in again to see how they were doing. Inside the restaurant, there was an active cleaning. All the tables were carefully moved to the wall. The curtains were taken down for washing. You have real work in full swing here, he noted. Lyra looked much better. Her eyes were shining with energy. And is dinner ready? Valera was surprised, noticing the set table. Yes, Lyra answered sheepishly. There are so many products here, and everything is so delicious. Little Ritochka was helping her mother set the table, carefully sticking out the tip of her tongue from the strain. Valera looked at them and smiled, realizing that he had not eaten anything tastier in the last few days. Did you study cooking? He asked. Lyra laughed. Of course I did. And anyway, if it were possible, I would cook around the clock. I really like turning simple products into amazing dishes. Valera sighed. It's a pity we didn't meet earlier. We could have taken the restaurant to a new level. Lyra looked at him carefully. Why not try it now? It's too risky. If it doesn't work out, I'll be left with debts that I won't be able to pay off, Valera admitted. Lyra sighed. It's a shame. I've always liked this place. My husband and I used to come here in the first years after our wedding. She turned away and wiped away her tears. Don't worry, I'll have time to put everything in order. Just let me know in advance. Valera stopped by again, but didn't go inside. Every time he thought about the upcoming sale, his heart bled. The day of the deal arrived, and Valera, along with the buyer and several assistants, went to the restaurant. The owner of the bank, who had given a large loan for the purchase, also came with the buyer. They agreed that they would first inspect the restaurant from the inside and then discuss the price. Valera understood that he wanted to sell the place for a decent amount, but the buyer had not yet agreed to his terms. The restaurant was perfectly clean. There were fresh flowers on the side tables. The bank owner looked at Valery in bewilderment. Is your restaurant really closed? The atmosphere here is like in the best working establishments. Today they made an exception, especially for you, Valery answered and offered to sit down. Then he headed to the kitchen. Little Rita was drawing in his office where a cartoon was on. He found Lyra in the kitchen. She looked tense and pale. Something happened? He asked worriedly. Yes. Among your guests is my ex-husband, the one who tried to deprive me of my daughter and left us without a roof over our heads. Really? Which one of them? The one in the blue suit. That's the buyer. I wonder where he got the money to buy the restaurant. He's taking out a loan. Leave it. I'll take it all out myself so he won't see you. 15 minutes later, the room was silent as everyone concentrated on eating. Finally, one of the guests exclaimed, God, it's so delicious that I didn't even notice how I ate it all. The bank owner nodded and added, If you decide to buy this restaurant, persuade the person who cooked it to stay with you. Otherwise, it will be difficult to find someone of that caliber. All eyes turned to Valery, who only managed to hesitate, as if he didn't know what to say. But then Lyra stepped into the room. Hello, she said softly. The buyer jumped up, shocked by her presence. Lyra, what are you doing here? I'm cooking here, don't shout, she answered calmly. How? Since when did you become so bold? Lyra shrugged. Maybe since you brought another woman into our house? Or since you left me and our daughter on the street? How dare you? The buyer exploded. You kidnapped her. The bank owner, watching the scene, turned his gaze to Valery, who only nodded. I know. If you want, I'll tell you the details later. The bank owner stood up and said calmly, I'm sorry, but I don't want to deal with people like that. We won't approve the loan. Valery, grinning, turned to the buyer. You know, I changed my mind about selling the restaurant. With a chef like that, we'll restore its former glory. The buyer jumped up. You'll regret this. And you, Lyra, too. I'll deprive you of your daughter. You have no money, no place to live. You're wrong about that, Valery said firmly. Lyra is now my fiancée, and Rita will be under my protection. The buyer left, casting an angry glance, and Lyra quietly burst into tears of relief. The bank owner smiled at Valery and offered, I am ready to give you a loan on the best terms, as long as there is always a place for me in this establishment. 3 months passed. The changes in the restaurant hall were minimal, but the kitchen underwent a major reconstruction. Valery called his previous waitresses, and those who could returned to their previous places. On the eve of the opening, the kitchen was in full swing. Valery looked in there a couple of times, but he was immediately thrown out. He sat down in the hall, looking around. Everything looked perfect, and he understood that this was Lyra's merit, as if she felt every detail. Rita sat down next to him and, keeping up the conversation, said, They won't let you in there? They won't let you in, Valery sighed. Don't be sad, they won't let me in either, Rita smiled, showing adult seriousness. When Mom cooks, she doesn't notice anyone around her. Valery smiled. Even you? Even me, Rita answered seriously. But I'm not offended. Mom is a passionate person. Valery realized that Rita might not have fully understood all the expressions, but her efforts sounded so sincere that he couldn't help but smile. Rita and Lyra moved in with Valery. He took them away immediately after Rita met her ex-husband. Valery hired a lawyer and began dividing Lyra's property, although her ex did everything he could to hinder this process. Lyra didn't know it yet, but today she officially became free, and her ex transferred compensation for her share of the apartment to her card. Rita, how about some ice cream? Valery suggested. Let's do it. Otherwise, why just sit there? We can't get to the kitchen anyway, just so Mom doesn't see. She always says that sweets are bad for you in the evening, Rita answered. An hour later, Lyra entered the room and, smiling, watched Valery and Rita, noticed how they were happily eating ice cream. Her gaze fell on the table, and she almost lost the power of speech. Are you completely crazy? You ate everything. Rita quickly glanced at Valery and giggled, then rushed after him when he cheerfully headed for the exit. They walked together to the embankment, where Lyra, having caught up with them and caught her breath, walked next to Valery. Suddenly he stopped unexpectedly and, looking at her with a smile, said, "You know, today you are officially free. It's all over. Perhaps now you will be skeptical about marriage?" he teased. "I don't know. I haven't even thought about it," Lara answered. "Then think about it." Valery turned her towards him and kissed her tenderly. "Just not for too long. I already bought a ring. If you liked the story, please support me with a like. And to learn about the release of new, interesting stories, subscribe to my channel. All the best to you. Thank you for watching.